Bongiwe, it's been exactly 3 weeks since the incarceration of former President Jacob Zuma to the day, actually. And, you know, there's no doubt that his arrest somewhat formed a trigger for the weeks of rampant looting and civil disobedience, that we are still, as a nation, left with more questions than answers. Whether we're talking about the public tug-of-war between the ministers within the security cluster, the defense minister contradicting the president, and the instigators who still may be out and about, it seems as though the common denominator here is the ANC, and so says ANC veteran Mavuso Msimang. But to chat more about whether or not the blame should squarely be placed at the feet of the ANC, I'm joined by another veteran of the movement, that's Mr. Pallo Jordan. Good evening to you, Mr. Jordan. And you know, the article that was written, or the opinion piece, I should say, that was written by Ubaba Msimang, he's basically saying that the ANC has left so many of these issues for so long that it resulted in, you know, the unrest that we saw and the various themes or socio-economic issues now coming to the fore once again. Do you agree with what he's had to say?
Well, I'm sure that is one dimension of the problem, but I think it's multi-layered and far more complex. When one thinks about the pictures on the scene of the events, well, it's a week ago now, isn't it? Yeah. Looting, etc. You had people taking things like television sets. You had people carrying away fridges. You had people taking away a number of appliances. Now that isn't poverty. But then you also had people who were taking away food. Now that could be said to be as a result of poverty. Then you had other events associated with this as well. The response of others to the looting or reported looting. So one can't say it's just the problems within the ANC. I think too there is a dimension which has to be looked at. People have been arrested and charged with inciting the events that happened. So that has to be looked into as well. And I don't think that's only as a result of problems within the ANC.
Mr. Jordan, however, if you look at the response of leaders of the ANC in this regard, when you look at the ANC deployees in government, the ministers in the security cluster, for an example, are really having a public spat. I'm talking about Begicele and Ayanda Dlodlo here. When you look at how the defense minister contradicted the president in terms of the characterization of what took place over the last few weeks, it's clear to the nation that there seems to be the extension of ANC factional battles even within the fear of the state. Do you still then believe that this can't be blamed squarely at the feet of the ANC, or at the very least then have President Cyril Ramaphosa come out and apologize to citizens for being victims of what is happening within the governing party?
Well, I can't comment about what's happening in the government, and I don't think it's my place to tell the president what to do.
And you know, earlier on, you know, President Cyril Ramaphosa was in Tembisa, and I want you to listen to this short clip, Mr. Jordan, because, you know, there is a sense that had there been some kind of conversation within the governing party, even before former President Jacob Zuma was arrested, perhaps then there would have been a solution. He was asked, President Ramaphosa was asked whether or not he's spoken to former President Jacob Zuma. I want us to just quickly take a listen to that particular insert.
No, I did not speak to former President Jacob Zuma before he handed himself over. We regarded that as a process that must be handled in the normal course. So there was really no need for that. And in any event, I am able to speak to former President Jacob Zuma anytime and in any way, but the occasion never presented itself then, and it didn't happen. I've received the SIU report. There's still some finalization of certain aspects which we're going to get. So I'm looking at it and I'm studying it. So allow me the time and the space to look at that.
Now, if you listen, Mr. Jordan, to what the president was saying, do you get a sense then that there is some semblance of responsibility now within the ANC that is being placed on the president, looking towards him to possibly even give him, the former president, a presidential pardon? But as you give me your response, I want you to then reflect on whether or not you believe the incarceration of former President Jacob Zuma was indeed a trigger for what we saw over the last couple of weeks.
Well, there are people who say it was, and there are people who claim it was, and then, again, as I say, there are people who have been charged with inciting it. So, you know, the association with incarceration of former President Zuma maybe it's one dimension thereof.
And Mr. Jordan, when you look at the people who have been arrested for allegedly instigating the violence, are you confident that these are the right people, or are these low-hanging fruit, so to speak? I'm talking of the likes of Newzroom Afrika, who's now been released on bail. Or are there people who are possibly puppet masters behind the scenes that we're yet to see actually being arrested for instigating the violence that we saw?
That's for the courts to determine, isn't it?
Of course it is for the courts to determine, but of course we've seen President Cyril Ramaphosa conceding then that they were caught pretty much with their pants down. And so what I'm speaking to here is the trust deficit that may be existing amongst South Africans on the ability of law enforcement authorities to get to the bottom of this, so that a few weeks from now we don't see a similar situation unfolding.
No, I think, you know, let's see what happens. Let's see what happens.
All right, thank you very much. Well, that's Mr. Pallo Jordan. He's, of course, an ANC stalwart, and he was just weighing in then on the recent civil unrest that we've seen in the country. But, of course, off the back of the latest opinion piece written by ANC veteran Mavuso Msimang, who believes that the ANC owes the country an apology for what we've seen taking place over the last couple of weeks.